Calling this hearing to order. For the record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and also the Chair of the City Council's Committee on COVID-19, Boston's COVID-19 Recovery. Joined here by my colleagues, Councillor Erin Murphy at large, Councillor Liz Braden, District 9, and Councillor Frank Baker, District 3. This hearing is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.covid19@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councillors. Public testimony will also be taken at the end of this hearing. So if you wish to sign up for public testimony here in the chamber, you can sign in on the sign-in sheet near the door in the corner. And if you're looking to testify virtually, watching from home, please email Shane Pack at shane.pac@boston.gov. That's shane.pack@boston.gov for the link, and Shane will add your name to the list and get you on there. Today's hearing is on docket 0159, order for a hearing regarding a review of COVID-19 recovery funds. And specifically, it's looking at the ESSER funds on the BPS side. I think as colleagues know, obviously the ESSER funds that came from the federal government in some of the same bills that sent the American Rescue Plan funds that this body appropriated, sent them directly to the school district, such that the sort of appropriation activity is done at the school committee level rather than the council level. But because of council oversight over the BPS budget and just how totally intertwined, of course, the sort of joint project of funding and supporting the work of educating our children is, obviously the council has a deep interest in what's happening with the sort of $500 million of ESSER funds. So that is what this hearing today is focused on. And I do want to note it was co-sponsored, this original hearing order, which we've been using to talk about this, but also American Rescue Plan funds and other things by myself, Councillor Braden, and Councillor Brian Worrell of District 4. We've also been joined today by President Ed Flynn, Councillor for District 2. So I'll allow my colleagues to make brief comments. I would ask that they be brief because I think I'm most interested in us all having time for questions after the presentation. But I will go to folks for brief comments, and then we will hand the floor over to Nate Cooter, the Chief Financial Officer for BPS, and Serena LaRoque, Director of ESSER for the schools, to give us a presentation, and then we'll go to questions. So I'll go in order of arrival, but I am going to go first to my co-sponsor on this docket, Councillor Liz Braden, for any opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will keep my remarks very brief this morning. I think this is a timely check-in with you folks from BPS to see how the ESSER funds have been allocated. This is an incredible opportunity for us to really intentionally address the impacts of COVID. And probably a once-in-a-generation opportunity to really expend funds to really move the dial in terms of services for our young people in our schools, and to really help mitigate the incredible devastation that COVID has the impact of COVID on our young people and their families across the city. So I'm really interested to see how the money's been spent, and any benchmarks that we've managed to meet, or and just get a status update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here this morning. Looking forward to this conversation. I do have specific questions after your presentation, and I do hope we touch on, you know, these funds are supposed to be investing in the learning loss of our students and the social emotional well-being of our students and staff coming out of COVID. You know, this is why the money's there. So I will hope to get an update, and maybe the presentation will touch on it. If not, I'll ask more questions about what investments we're making in our data collection to improve that, because without the proper data, we're not sure if we're putting the funds where we need them. I know I've spoken during budget, and anytime anyone will listen about the need to invest more in athletics and art and other social emotional supports for our students, which I believe we have enough in our regular BPS budget, but with this ESSER funding, making sure we're investing in those critical things for our students. Also would hope that we touch on and speak about the $166 million the 101 million we've already spent, but the 65 million we're planning on spending out of ESSER funding to pay for empty seats, when I know we could have a robust conversation about where those millions could be spent differently, making sure if they could go directly to students and schools that, you know, just need the support. So looking forward to this conversation, and we'll have more specific questions after the presentation, but thank you for being here.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Baker?
Thank you, Madam President. Just looking forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no opening statement. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I think I've said this on a number of occasions, but for me, the biggest question is just the sustainability question of, you know, it's a great problem to have when the federal government gives you a bunch of one-time money, but so many of the Boston Public Schools, you know, challenges and the things that the school department's really working on are multi-year endeavors that involve kind of like deep long-term investment and change. And so for me, that's always been the question mark about the ESSER funds, is like, how are we using them strategically with our eyes wide open to that and not putting ourselves in sort of cliff positions. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this hearing. But we can get to more questions and editorial comments after your presentation. Thank you again for being here. Again, it's Nate Cooter, CFO for the school district, and Serena LaRoque, Director of ESSER for the schools, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, and good morning. It's great to be back with you and talking about such an important topic. I think your comments all framed this perfectly, the importance of this hearing and the challenges and opportunities that we have with the elementary and secondary school Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER. So this morning we're going to talk through how we're currently spending ESSER and our progress to date, both in terms of how much we've spent and the programs that we're spending it on, providing some examples of school-based spending so you can get a sense of how schools are approaching the use of ESSER. And then we're going to talk about some of the sustainability challenges and get into some of the things that Councillor Bach mentioned. So with that, I want to start the presentation with this statement from the Opportunity and Achievement Gap policy. It's really important for us to think about and anchor ourselves in closing opportunity and achievement gaps. And as Councillor Murphy mentioned, with the intent of ESSER to be around closing opportunity gaps that were and achievement gaps that were further worsened during the pandemic, we have an obligation to really think about and be strategic about how we approach that learning loss. One of the things that we know coming out, that we know now that we didn't know at the start of the pandemic, certainly, and really at the first few months of reopening school, is that the learning loss will not be sort of fixed in a single year. And we need to make the system changes to make sure that we're approaching this as a long-term change to the way we do business as a school district, to meet the needs of our students and to make sure that they are prepared for college or life after high school. And so we need to think about this as a multi-year strategy. It's not just about spending the money quickly or spending the money in immediate ways, but also thinking about how do we structure ourselves and structure our organization to meet those student needs in the long run. So we're going to start this morning by talking about ESSER allocations and spending, and talk about how we've budgeted ESSER, both on the district and school level. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Serena, who's going to walk you through the next set of slides.
So this table illustrates the plan for spending among the different types of investments that serve specific purposes in our effort to return, recover, and reimagine. So for the school plan, there's an average of $50 million per year for each year going directly to schools. And this was done with the guidance of the ESSER Commission in spring 2021. We're using a per pupil formula to concentrate funds on schools serving high needs, so that students with disabilities, multilingual students, multilingual students with disabilities, and low-income students. And so we heard from the community that it was critically important that schools receive funds as soon as possible, that school leaders engage their community to help inform how they spend their funds, and that the funds demonstrate impact on student outcomes. I did say 50 million per year, and if you add that up, does not add up to the 161. So there is that additional 11.5 million that will go directly to schools, but directed from the district to support our inclusion and multilingual efforts. The next one, you'll see district-wide investments, and those are funding programs, services, materials, in some cases staff, that benefit schools and their students directly, but that they are planned, purchased, and supported through the district. We use this approach particularly where there are supports that are needed across many or all schools, or where there's specific equity and access gaps that need to be addressed between schools. Then you'll see there's a community and cross-school innovation bucket. We currently have plans to use these funds to support our major district priorities, so community partners are also funded as part of this, as part of our district and school plan efforts. And then we have the additional COVID mitigation, and so that covers the cost of additional items such as school cleaning, PPE, and so there are some under the district investment bucket that are other COVID mitigation, such as stipends for nurses and air filtration, but majority of that is under the additional COVID mitigation for PPE. So we're gonna go a little bit into this spending portion. So BPS to date has spent 186 million of ESSER funding. Now, when I say spending, I mean actually expended, encumbered, meaning we started a contract, but the services are going. And then we also included filled projected salaries in that as well. Unfilled is not included in this piece in terms of spending because it's vacant, and so we just want to keep an eye on that. And so it's broken up, those totals, across ESSER 1, 2, and 3, right? So ESSER 1, that's done. That was the completely spent of the 55 million. The amount that I'm giving you is as of October 2022. I think that's important to note. We are going to do a deeper dive coming up, but I do want to mention that that's where that number is coming from. ESSER 2, we've spent about 65 million of that, and then ESSER 3 is 66 million. So to ensure that, we understand we need to monitor this, so to ensure that BPS is adequately monitoring and spending by the relevant deadlines, we're implementing a few checks and balances. And so first, the district has divided ESSER 2 and 3 investments into the 3 annual budget years. So we have those benchmarks of what we need to spend year 1, year 2, year 3, so that we can check to see how we budgeted versus what actually happened in terms of spending. Secondly, one of our strategies is to spend down ESSER 2 first and then ESSER 3. And so this is something that we need to keep track of, right, as we think about the spend down throughout the years. Next, as I mentioned slightly earlier, is that we're looking at FTE spending and vacancies. So we want to be sure that we're able to reallocate funding that's tied to unfilled positions, especially over time. And then finally, we're reallocating funds that are underspent in ways that are aligned to our major district priorities, such as equitable literacy, inclusion, multilingual learning. So for example, BPS repurposed unspent funds from FY22 and reallocated 4.5 million over 2 years to have a contract with City Year, since a lot of schools were requesting to work with City Year, and it's part of our equitable literacy implementation support at schools. So that's like one example of how we're reallocating funds. So the long-awaited slide of FTEs. So as this serves two purposes. So one, what's filled and not filled, right, as we're thinking about reallocation. And then two, what are the ongoing costs? So thinking about sustainability that Nate will talk to a little bit later. And what types of FTEs are they? Like, what are they requesting and how is it aligned to our district initiatives, right? So currently on the school side, there's 27.9 million budgeted positions for FY23 on ESSER for schools, which is about 274.3 FTEs on the school side. For central office, there's currently 21.9 million budgeted positions, and that's 192 positions. Of that, as of October, 215.4 FTEs on the school side was filled, and again, as of October, 110 FTEs on the central side were filled. So we wanted to dive in and think about like what the positions are specifically. And so a lot of the schools are using their funds to support their students with disabilities and the inclusion efforts that has a dual purpose of addressing learning loss, but also thinking long-term beyond ESSER. They are also doing program supports around special education and student services. They have specialists to support with equitable literacy. And then they have instructional coaches for the non-transformation schools. On the district side, we've invested a lot in equitable literacy in our multilingual infrastructure, special education compensatory services, nursing, inclusion, and then the telescope and teacher leadership. So on the district side, that's where a lot of those positions lie. Now, if you look across the two, there's overlap, right? So we're simultaneously investing in inclusion and equitable literacy at the same time on the position side. So as one of our sustainability strategies, it's really important that we think about progress monitoring, thinking about what's working and what's not working, what do we need to sustain versus what do we need to stop. And so this is why we are spending time around the school and district process for continuous improvement. It's also important to note that our national experts do say that to do the gold standard of return on investment is difficult in terms of the short amount of time of ESSER. However, they do say that you do need to think about your benchmarks, you do need to think about your progress and how you're measuring up toward that progress. And so that's what we're doing. So in terms of the proposal portion where schools and districts reach out to us each year, we are thinking about like how is it aligned to schools' quality school improvement plans, and those plans have things such as student outcome measures, progress monitoring measures. It has, basically it's their implementation plan, and that existed before ESSER and continues to exist with ESSER and after ESSER. The other piece that we look at is how is the rationale of the expenses aligned to those priorities, both on a school and district side? How have you engaged your community, and how is it supporting the students most impacted? So that's the kind of data that we need to understand when we are allocating the funds. There is a mid-year and end-of-year reflection for both school and districts. The timing is a little bit different in terms of like the months, but essentially it does happen 2 times throughout the year. And so we basically ask what was done, what's worked, what hasn't, what's the general evidence of impact, especially around student outcomes, what's the evidence of equity and the demand on school, community engagement, and then what ESSER investments have been most helpful and in the spending. And all of that is meant to help with us as we're closing the achievement gap. Also, developing, closing the achievement gap by equitable funding, robust academic performing and social emotional supports, ensuring that we get the community engagement, and then what we're sustaining beyond ESSER. So those are kind of the three steps that we're taking. Again, it's not linear, it's cyclical, but too much to put in a circle here. So on this end, we're going to go into an example of a district highlight. And Council Murphy, I didn't pick the social emotional learning, so we can ask that later. I did zone in on the accelerate academic performance, but we do have this level of data for every single bucket. And so in terms of the district ESSER highlight, we've allocated $42.6 million to accelerate academic performance. And so one of that is through equitable literacy, provide every school with library staffing, library collections, and information science technology, creating 60 new outdoor teaching and learning spaces in science. That includes field trips, offering ethnic studies to all secondary high schools, and provide interventions in individualized learning, such as remote tutoring, access through paper. So as of October, 40% of our, there was an increase of 40% in student library access compared to last fiscal year. So actually compared to FY21. Over 400 teachers received professional development on equitable literacy. So basically, how do you interact with your students around discourse, student discourse, engaging students a little bit more. 76 elementary schools received curriculum materials, and then 35 Telescope Teacher Leadership Fund grants were awarded and are in progress. So this is all, this is some of the progress under our accelerating academic performance on the central office investment. We're also going to give some examples on a school level as well for school plan investments. So Cash, as a school, saw improvement in MAP growth reading scores, and there was that connection to the ESSER funding strategies. Now, there are other things in their budget that could lead to this, but the specific pieces that ESSER is funding that helped with this outcome is that they've invested $25,000 in educator and teacher leaderships. So stipends helped to fund teacher time as they joined professional development, such as the Reading Horizon training and then the Science of Reading, again, all under the equitable literacy professional development. And then $30,000 were spent in high quality text. And so in this case, Cash approach to their investments was that each academic department received funding to purchase text. So their math, ELA, their science, history, their program for students with autism. And so that was their approach here that they felt contributed to their outcomes. In the case of English high and multilingual learners the English. So for them, they saw improvement in MAP growth reading for multilingual learners and improvement in school climate for their staff and students. And so for them, they spent a little over $125,000 per year in reading specialists so that they can support small group and individual instruction with literacy. They also spent a little over $33,000 on partnerships, after-school enrichment activities, field trips to create joyful learning experiences, and just to make the curriculum tangible and relevant to students. A portion of the partnerships were allocated to counseling supports for students as well. Next, in the case of, I'm going to give an inclusion example. In the case of Hernandez, they saw higher growth in MAP growth reading and math for students in their 5th and 7th grades for students that were receiving IEP services. And for them, they spent a little over $566,000 in FTE. And that included admin support to oversee MTSS for behavior, social, emotional support, family engagement, and establishing a new system around their community hub and wraparound services. They mentioned that this admin was also critical in helping them think through their scheduling so that they can maximize their staff's time in providing more intensive supports to their students in small group learning. They also had learning specialists, so that's paired to that scheduling, right? Where on ESSER, they have 2.8 FTE, and they work with 2 grade levels to make it possible for all students with IEP to receive pushed-in services rather being pulled out. They said that they saw significant growth when they thought about previous years with this particular strategy. And then finally, $32,000 was spent on teachers in Paris to invest in their leadership and peer coaching, as well as support in bilingualism and biliteracy development. So I know that I'm only giving examples, but this is part of what we're doing, is diving into the data of what each school is doing so that we can then see what's working and move up. Our ODA is also looking holistically, but from an ESSER point of view, this is the type of thing that we're doing so that we're keeping track of what ESSER funds are, like how they are helping. And so with that, I'm gonna pass it to Nate Cooter.
Next thing we wanted to cover for you this morning was our sustainability planning. Obviously, with $400 million in ESSER funding coming to us as a district, it's a tremendous opportunity, but there's also a tremendous risk for us. And so this chart shows the allocations, both general fund increases and our ESSER spending over the 4 years, starting with ESSER 1, which is also CARES Act, and then the 3-year period of ESSER 2 and 3. And so you can see this is the concern that counselors are already raising, and that we're starting to think about as a district of how do you transition from this amount of ESSER spending onto our traditional spending without causing significant cuts to services and programs.
And Nate, can I just interrupt you just to clarify for someone looking at that chart, that this is obviously not a chart of the whole BPS budget, that this is of the, can you just explain that it's the additional increment?
Sorry, this is the incremental change off of the fiscal year 20 budget. So, thank you. And just to further explain the chart, in the first column, this says FY21, we received $36 million in an annual investment from the city of Boston on our general funds. And that year we had $51 million on CARES Act, and this includes $20 million that we received from the city's funding in that year, helped pay for laptops.
Sorry, just 1 second, Councilor Baker. And then I was just going to say, and my understanding, right, is that you guys are actually doing this above a sort of like inflation or cost increase line, right? Like the 36 was like a real new investments 36, as opposed to also including the increases in contracts and personnel costs and such.
Correct. In those years, the operating budget, I'd have to go back and give you the exact numbers in terms of our total increase, but in those years, the investments were over and above our maintenance cost increase.
Right.
Or level service increase.
Right.
But in those cases, in those years, because we had offsetting decreases in our costs and increases in our costs, that the $36 million represents our appropriation increase for that year as well.
Oh, okay, right, because we didn't have the same inflationary dynamic.
And we didn't have a settled collective bargaining agreement in those years.
Right, okay, got it. So yeah, and just so, I was interrupting you just to clarify this for folks at home, because if you look at this chart and you're like, wow, that's the whole BPS budget, no. So you take the whole BPS budget, you adjust it by sort of what's the amount to just maintain the current service that you're paying for, and then over 3 years, in the Walsh administration crossing into Janey, there was this $100 million of new investment, which is the blue number. although now it looks like 110 when I look at it.
It absolutely was. So the 3-year $100 million commitment ended up being a 3-year $110 million commitment of increased costs. That's represented by the blue and gray bars because that was the 3-year incremental increases with ESSER on top of that. And so, we've been very fortunate by your continued support and the continued support of the Mayor's office for new investments. And so we've been able to expand things both on the general fund and on ESSER, new investments in social emotional positions, new investments in family liaisons and nurses, all part of our operating budget, not in the sort of more unsustainable funding of ESSER. But either way.
Wait, just before you go, because I did.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Councilor Baker,
Councilor.
what were you?
Yeah, I was just asking that 36 is representative of the increase from 20 to 21 in your regular budget that would come in front of us.
Absolutely right.
And then the 34 would be on top of that. So the second year, just going up incrementally.
Right.
Yeah, and then the gray bar represents that sort of sustained investment. So the 110 million that you mentioned, Councilor Bach, is represented in the gray bar in FY24. The 65 million represents the incremental increase that we're proposing for this year's budget. So 175 million over FY20. And then the 134 represents the sort of projected amount of ESSER funding we'll have available for next year based on the current spend rate and available funding. And so when we think about from a school perspective, there's multiple things that we're trying to balance from a sustainability perspective. The first is we're trying to be really thoughtful about how we spend that $400 million so that we don't create more of a fiscal cliff. But at the same time, we want to spend all of that. We don't want to return money to the federal government. So there is that real tension of the time period that we have to spend it and the mechanisms that we have to spend that level of funding. The other piece is that we want to think about what are the things that are most critical for us to sustain that are strategically aligned and not just continuing to fund those things because they were in our budget before. And so there's a real tension between new investments and critical strategic aligned investments and what schools have spent in the past. And so we need to take a critical lens at both of those things as we think about sustainability, because there's no path forward where we do everything the same way, right? If our system is designed to get the results we're getting, we know we need to change the way we do things in order to get better results for our students. It's part of the outcome-based budgeting work that the superintendent has challenged us to do and that this body has asked us to do repeatedly. So what we're doing in next year to help prepare for this fiscal cliff and start the challenge. The first is that we are making a $15 million investment. So $15 million of our general fund increase is going to take things that are on ESSER in the schools that we think are strategically aligned. And strategically aligned mostly has to do with equitable literacy, inclusive strategies, and our strategic plan for multilingual learners. Those are the 3 priority areas for us in terms of identifying things that schools are already doing in that area, as Serena has mentioned, and move them onto the general fund to signal that those are the types of investments that we need to sustain beyond ESSER. At the same time, we're identifying $24.5 million, which represents roughly half of the hold harmless funding that we had last year. So in a typical budget year, in a weighted student funding district, as enrollment declines, we would adjust school budgets accordingly. For the last 2 fiscal years, we have not made those adjustments. In the first year, it was meant to stabilize school enrollment and stabilize school investments as we were coming out of the pandemic and reopening schools. We didn't want to make major cuts to services and programs in schools while the students were already experiencing the instability of the pandemic. The other thing that we wanted to do was maintain capacity because we weren't sure how much of the enrollment declines that we were experiencing were the result of temporary lack of mobility in terms of students and immigration, and how much of them were just sort of the sort of continued trends. What we saw in the second year was that it was partially beneficial that we had maintained capacity because we saw an influx of multilingual learners, of immigrant students that had started to return to our district, so we needed additional capacity. But the reality is that we still have more capacity. We've still maintained services and programs as if we had the same number of students we had 2 years ago. So we need to think about how we're going to transition that enrollment. So part of this is asking schools to go through their budget and move things that are part of the hold harmless onto ESSER. And we're in the first couple of weeks of doing that with schools, and you start to see the concern that they have around the sustainability. But this is part of the exercise that we need to do as a district to help sort of identify really what is it that we want to make sure is continued in future years, and what are those things that we need to start to think about how we're going to sunset in terms of our funding. So what this looks like practically, in a school budget, and this is a K-8 school example, that's why I said school-wide budget. It's just meant to be an illustrative example, though this is a real school. This is the funding that they've received over and above their weighted student funding amount. And so as part of that, you see two parts. One are district-directed positions. So we will come in and say, every school needs to have certain positions: a family liaison, an instructional coach, librarian, and partnership dollars. These are examples of positions that are over and above their weighted student funding, that are considered non-required positions, but are district-directed positions, meaning we think they're critical for student success and are aligned to our strategies. That totals about $900,000. This school also received funding for school-directed positions, meaning these are positions that the school has decided that they're going to invest in the past: assistant principal, a cluster sub, guidance, and other positions in the schools. Critical for the schools to be able to run their program as is, but it's school-based decisions. We didn't, as a district, tell them that they needed to budget those positions. The total funding, so that includes the Foundation for Quality, which is the minimum funding that a school would receive, and hold harmless dollars. What we're doing with them as a school is we're working through the budget and now saying, okay, the things that are district directed, that are part of this hold harmless, will remain on your general funds. And for the things that are school directed, those things represented in purple, those are the pieces that are eligible to move to ESSER. Those are the things that in a typical budget year prior to the pandemic, we would have, unfortunately, the school would have had to cut those services and programs. They wouldn't have been able to maintain them. Each school is given a target for how much funding they need to move onto ESSER based on the size of their hold harmless. And so it's not the full amount of their hold harmless, but it's a percentage of that. And then finally, we're also working with schools to identify those things that are on their ESSER funding to move on to it. So you may see a single school that has positions moving in sort of both directions. They're moving hold harmless things off of ESSER and, holding hold harmless off of their general funds and onto ESSER. And they're identifying those things on ESSER that are strategically aligned. Things like instructional aids supporting their special education programming, their inclusion strategies. Those would be things that are eligible to move off of ESSER and onto the general funds. And so what that means from a school is not necessarily a change in funding. All schools are going to receive the same amount of funding, but it is going to show them these are the things that are strategically aligned that are important for us to continue. And these are the things that are not strategically aligned that we think have value, but in a time where we're not able to fund schools at this same level, these are the things that will be eligible to be reduced in future years as we go into it. So with that, I'm going to just note that we are in the process of revisiting our overall school funding, the Reimagine School Funding Project. It's an opportunity for us to think about what every school needs to be funded, what we need to have at every school, and our funding mechanism. So the result of this is that we will no longer be funding schools possibly as early as FY25 using weighted student funding. There will be a new sort of funding mechanism in place to solve some of the challenges we've had. But it's an opportunity for the community to provide us a lot of feedback and families to provide us a lot of feedback. And then the last thing I want to mention is reports are available online. You can both go to Boston Public Schools //budget to find all of our budget documents, but then also if you go to our website and look for the ESSER section, you'll be able to find information and an updated report which we just published this week around ESSER spending to date. And with that, I will turn it over to Councillor Bach and to you for questions.
Great. And sorry, Nate, the report that's just been published, the February 2023 one, when you say update to date, is it also only through October, or is it actually to date?
Yeah, so the spending report that we are giving you is as of October for a couple reasons. The first is just there's a normal lag time that comes from when spending occurs and when we have the reports available. The last update that we gave to school committee was in December based on that October. And then, of course, we're in the middle of budget season, and so we've just gotten behind a little bit in terms of our updates. So the October spending is the latest that's part of that report, and then we'll continue to update the school committee with spending patterns. But part of the reason, as Serena mentioned, included in that is not just spending to date, but projected spending based on filled vacancies, filled FTEs, and our encumbrances, which is a good estimate for how much we think we'll spend in the current year. We haven't seen a significant shift in spending since that time.
Yeah, I guess I just want to flag that, I think, so to me, there's like kind of two fiscal questions here. One of them is about the sustainability and making sure that, this transition stuff that you were just talking about. And then the other, as you alluded to, and we've been focused on this with ARPA as well, is what's our spend down rate, right? Mm-hmm. And like how close are we to, because we really have to land the plane on that dime, right, with this federal funding. And I will just say that with ARPA, we've got a quarterly report. And yes, it is lagging, it goes up and then it lags a month, but it doesn't lag 5 months. And I think I just think it's, for me, when we're talking about stuff that has to be spent by September 24, having data that's 5 months out of date is tricky for understanding where you guys are, right? Especially with the ESSER 2 funds, right, which have to be spent by this September. Just seeing that the amount of that bar graph that is that's allocated but unspent, and I'm sure that I would be much less concerned about it if I saw the updated number for even January, right? But I think it's just keeping in mind that the part of the oversight purpose is to make sure that we're really hitting those targets. And so I think just given the timeline we're on, having the data lag that much doesn't really work. I don't think it should work for the school committee, and it doesn't work for the council. So I would just say that that's something that I think the committee will follow up on in pretty short order, is getting the most updated data that you have available without asking you to, obviously you can't close the books on a month till you close the books on a month. I'm not, but I think really that it's one of the things that I feel antsy about in an oversight role. So, but that's just more of an editorial comment. I'm going to go to my colleagues first, and then I'll go to my questions. Councillor Braden.
I share Councillor Bach's concern about the allocated but unspent portion, given the tight timelines we're on. I'm really wondering in terms of just central staff, central versus schools. One deficit I see when we look at the BPS budget in terms of the funding for partnerships. I think partnerships is one area where we can build some sustainability over time. And are we investing in developing partnerships at this time when we have a little extra, so that we would have an infrastructure going forward? My understanding last year when I asked the question at budget was there wasn't a huge number of, there was one person really assigned to working on partnerships in the city of Boston. And I really feel that we're leaving a lot on the table when it comes to leveraging our relationships and our partnerships across the city in all sectors. And I just want to know, are we investing in that particular aspect? I know Councillor Murphy and I both share a concern about athletics, school athletics. It is incredible investment that is a payoff. It gives you a lot of return for your investment in terms of emotional health, engagement, leadership, lots of really good health benefits for our students if they're able to access our athletics as well. So those are the two particular areas that I'm interested in, athletics and partnerships.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I think Serena's going to pull up the actual investments on partnerships and athletics, just to give you an update. But I'll just say, I think from a partnership perspective, I do think that we've had some conversations around those partners that we want to make sure it's sort of an interesting opportunity for us to provide seed money or startup costs for a partnership or expand a partnership, but we need to be thinking about that long-term sustainability of what that partnership meant. And so I think an interesting example of that, one that I'm excited about in terms of, we've been working with our science department in terms of getting more, I think the term that they're using is this sort of rites of passage, where we're starting to identify opportunities for students to be able to go and have experiences at one of the great partners we have, either Thompson Island or Hale or somewhere where they're able to go and have these sort of outdoor experiences, very science-based in terms of the experience that they have during the day, but then also there's a lot of opportunity for them to have sort of these team building, sort of reconnecting with their peers, reconnecting with their school opportunities that I think we've started to work with schools on, and then we're going to think about how do we sustain that ongoing. Because we have tremendous opportunity in the city to do really cool things like that. We have resources throughout partnerships, so I agree with you on that. And then in terms of athletics, I think there's an opportunity for us to invest in the startup costs of new programs. But again, it's an interesting place where you have to think about sustainability. We didn't want to stand up a whole bunch of teams only to take them away 2 years later if we don't have a funding strategy for that. So I think that's part of our sort of two-part, that you can buy new equipment, you can start thinking about training for coaches, but if we don't have that plan for how we're going to fund those teams in FY25, that can actually lead to a pretty rough experience for an individual student. But Serena, I don't know if there's other in terms of numbers you want to add.
So there are three on the athletic side, or improving health and physical education. There are three central office investments, and one is in expanding and improving athletics, so increasing access to organized sports for K through 8 and secondary levels. So that's through additional teams, equipment, coaching staff, facilities, and maintenance. There's another investment where they are working to close the gap in physical education instruction so it's more accessible. And then the other one is through health literacy, so not necessarily just like physical education. And so for this one, they're hoping to close the opportunity and access gap in health education by expanding high quality and health programming to 12 additional schools, grades 6 through 8. So that's on the central side of investments that are particularly for athletics. And then in terms of, and I'll also say that in the district dependent on our website, you can get into like the progress, how much is allocated, how much they've spent so far, again, as of October. And so you can get that information as well if you want additional details. In terms of partnerships, now that one lives in multiple places. So on the school investments side, schools are really relying on partnerships. So things ranging from enrichment activities to wraparound services to, which could include mental health supports, to things like Playworks. So there's a lot of partnerships that are being utilized on the school side. And then there are some, again, on the central office side. So we mentioned like City Year as an example. So there are investments in partnerships, but that's kind of like where it exists at the moment.
And in terms of central office staff, is it how? Like, I'm just thinking, like, who coordinates that? Like, who coordinates the partnerships? Who goes out and finds new partnerships? Are we really leveraging all the incredible resources we have across the city in our arts and science, eds and meds, or universities, our industry, all these new biotech jobs coming in? How are we getting in there, and how are we leveraging that opportunity? Like, I think we're asleep at the wheel here, really.
I would agree that we have tremendous resources here in the city, and being able to leverage that. I think partnerships are established in multiple ways. Individual schools will establish partnerships. I think some of our schools are better than others in terms of reaching out and developing those relationships. You mentioned some of the STEM partnerships, or sort of what I call content area specific partnerships that the central office academics team has been developing. Beth Maluski is the person who I mentioned who's working on that. the rites of passage sort of STEM partnership. And then we do have a partnership office under the superintendent's new structure. We have a deputy superintendent for family and community engagement who, as part of the portfolio, has that community engagement and partnership office that does, some of it is partnership coordination and vetting so that they can go out and find partners for schools. And in the past, we've had, partner fairs and sort of connecting schools. I think, I'm not sure when you said that there's only one person, at one point there was only one person because of vacancies, but we do have a team of people who are responsible for that community partners partnership. And when we come back in the spring, we can talk more about our approach to that. But it is a critical way for us to leverage the tremendous resources we have as a city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I've probably run out of time.
Just did.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. I'll go next to Councillor Murphy. Just for colleagues' reference, my phone timer for some reason is not causing actual sound, so I'm just going to tap with when you've hit your mark, and then like usual, I'll give you a couple of grace minutes, but just if you hear the tapping, it's because my technology is failing me. And we've also been joined by Councillor Ruth C. Louis-Jen at large. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. I'm not a big fan of slideshows, but I do appreciate what you shared. It was the spending piece, which is big. We could have our own hearing just on that. And then the sustainability piece, it goes together, but different questions about the two different, so I have a few questions coming out of this. Heard a lot about, you gave specific examples about what individual schools are doing. So you pulled a couple to highlight what they're doing. So it seems, I should assume that each school kind of is given the authority to decide what is best or how they think they should address the needs at their school, which has value, absolutely, but we definitely also have concern about data collection and how do we know that investment. So what data do we have that shows that what schools are choosing to do is actually giving us the outcomes that our students deserve? Also wanted to address the enrollment one. So I guess a little bit about the sustainability also. If I'm a household of 7 and then my kids grow up and all of a sudden I'm now a household of 4, but I still want to spend the same money. I mean, at some point, someone's going to say, no, you have to figure out how to spend less, like you have less expenses. I know there's that extra layer of a school committee, so we just kind of look at your budget, but then it's ultimately approved by the school committee. But if the Parks Department, which has 217 parks and playgrounds that they oversee, for the last decade was losing parks, but kept coming back to us, not just saying we want to have the same amount, don't decrease, but asking for more each year, even though their overall portfolio was dropping, I think we'd push back more than we do with schools. And as you know, being a teacher in the schools for over 20 years, I get it. I understand the numbers, the acronyms, the value of a lot of the things you're saying, but at what point are we just being irresponsible and we have to then address that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Hopefully it is the only time we're going to need the government to step in, that we're not going to go through another, COVID-19 pandemic. But at what point are we going to stop spending, right? So the question I had started with, we've already spent $101 million on empty seats over the last few years. You're asking to spend $65 million. This budget, $25 million of that would come out of ESSER funding. I could come up with a lot of sports teams and social workers and art classes and before and after school programming that I think would be better spent than on empty seats in our schools. Another question I have, partnerships. You mentioned, I know that every school now has a parent liaison. There was probably about a decade ago that some funded it, some didn't, but now across the system we invest in parent liaisons. What is their actual role? Because a lot of times they do spend most of their time, and it's needed, so I understand that they're busy with it, but with family concerns, how much of that and what is the job description should they also be tying into the community partnerships that Councilor Braden was mentioning that we know we're kind of dropping the ball on? Is that a role that every school has, that certain person in that building could really work on? And when you look at individual schools, the Blackstone has 700 students. It has one social worker. They have one literacy teacher. Like that's just not enough. And if you were to ask me what we should be spending our ESSER funding on, it would be to make sure that schools like the Blackstone and every school across the system has more than just one, social worker. So you could touch on some of those now. I have a couple more. Might have to go to my second round if I run out of time, but if you could address some of the questions I've asked already.
Great. I think I'll turn it over to Serena first to talk about the alignment of the plans and sort of the outcome-based question that you were asking at the start, and then I'll take on the sustainability questions.
So at the regional level, which is overseen by their school superintendents and then ultimately the district level, they are asked to do that quality school plan, and there is alignment from the central office that it is around like equitable literacy, social emotional aspects as well. And so that has come from the district, and then the district has sent out, particularly the Office of Data and Accountability has sent out like various measures to help measure that, along with different types of goals around that too. So that part is managed by the district in terms of setting those guidelines, managed by the regional superintendents. The regional model has been reinstituted this year, so that does look different than the previous year. And so that is part of the reason why ESSER has to be aligned to their quality school plan, because we do want them to set outcomes that are aligned to the guidance, but also we did, in addition to that, want to allow some level of flexibility for the unique needs for their particular school. And so that's where that came from as well.
So you asked a number of important questions around sustainability. I was just reminded of probably about a year ago. I was driving in a car and I was at a stoplight and the light turned green. And there's always that driver behind you. As soon as the light turns green, they hit their horn. And my friend in the car just looked at me and said, "Well, you can tell they think the pandemic's over." Because there was a moment where, like during the pandemic, that everyone was nice to each other, and then as people started to get out of the pandemic, we went back to being Bostonians. I feel like when we start talking about capacity and sustainability, there's a version of that that's true here as well. The first year of the pandemic, when enrollment declines, there was the need for us to stop all conversations around our configurations and to maintain classroom capacity. In year 2, we were focused on recovery, and now we're in sort of year 3, and there's this version of it where people, rightly so, are asking what is our sustainability plan and when are we going to start that conversation again? From a classroom capacity perspective, from the finance perspective, there's clear information. From a facilities perspective, we have clear information. But the decisions around when do we start to remove hold harmless is a community one. And I think coming out of the pandemic, we have gotten feedback from our community that we need to take time to have the discussions around what we want to see from a district footprint, what we want to see at all of our schools. Because I think at the time that you're mentioning, and rightly so, we've maintained positions at schools that they wouldn't have been able to maintain under old funding plans. We have continued to close classroom space. We closed 23 classrooms this year. But you're also saying we need to make sure there's more than one social worker at a school, or we need to make sure there's more than one literacy coach.
Because I know I'm going to run out of time.
Yeah.
We have a $1.4 billion budget. So another question that I'll do in my second round is, should any of these inclusion and supports that our students need forever, not just now, be taken into ESSER funding. But I think we need to be honest. Enrollment decline has been going on for decades. Chronic absenteeism isn't just because of the pandemic. The 2012 Globe headline was talking about the 40+% chronic absenteeism we continue to have. So yes, the pandemic caused a lot of harm to all of us, but it's not that the school system wasn't bloated before or having issues, right? This data, if we look before 2019 and go back 5-10 years, it's been an issue for decades now. So I don't think we can continue to just lean on the give us grace. And I will just end by saying, I think most Bostonians mean well and are kind, and I hope that those beeping behind you come from suburbs and are driving through our city. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. All right, I think Councillor Baker is up next.
Thank you. That's a Rhode Island driver. I found that
Yeah,
my take on
our
that's
residents
exactly
fa-
opposite from yours. Excuse me?
They probably work in BPS.
Yeah, I thought the treatment was nasty during COVID, especially as an elected. And I grew up in a neighborhood where everyone said hi to each other, and now it's a neighborhood where nobody says hi to each other. I think that's the new Boston you're seeing there now. Anyways, we digress. How much all in did BPS get for federal money? ARPA, ESSA, 490 something, or do you have that number?
400, so thinking about ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3,
Yeah.
431 million.
431 all in. It was just ESSER money. You did not get any ARPA money.
Sorry, we also received an additional, I believe it's 451 million is the total, with 20 million coming from that.
I included the 20 million.
That's included.
Oh,
already.
okay, yeah, okay. And is every bit of it spoken for now? You guys just here telling us this is where we're spending it and no input?
The chart on slide 5.
Yeah, I know the chart. It's all spoken for. It's not necessarily spent, but it's in the bucket that's going to be spent. It's in the, so basically there's no, you're not coming here asking us if we have any great ideas where we could possibly spend a couple $1 million. All done, all spoken for.
I always look for your
That's a
input
yes
into-
or a no, Nate.
There is.
Once for yes, twice for no.
I would say, no, the purpose of this hearing was not to get feedback on new spending ideas.
Yeah, so everything, that 431 is all spoken for throughout the next couple of years.
There is a portion of it that is unallocated, and you can see it's the dark orange on slide 5. So I think, and then there's always the opportunity for us to look at the things that are allocated, but the spending has not yet started. One of the things I was just going to mention in terms of the sustainability conversation, as well as, with the new superintendent in September, this is a transition budget as she starts to think about. She's already challenged us to go to zero base on central office, meaning the assumption is not a roll forward budget for FY25. I think the same thing is true as she looks at the ESSER plans, asking us to be critical and look at those things that have not yet started, and what are those things that are going to be critical for us to start versus those things that are really going to create a fiscal cliff that we may want to think about differently. And so, I think both of those buckets are sort of open.
The thing that concerns me is 431. I don't see, and maybe there is an investment in a field, an investment in a gym, any place that we could point to that would allow our kids that are in the school to be able to get a little more healthy than what they are now. That's a total disappointment to me. But whatever. Can you tell me, can you explain to me what equitable literacy is?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to explain this. The way I understand it, most simply, is that in every classroom, regardless of program, regardless of whether they're English learners, whether they're students in special education program, every day students have access to grade level text. What we know is in an effort to make sure that we're adapting the curriculum and working with students at where they're at, meeting students where they're at, in order to get them to grade level, we have sort of over-scaffolded is the term that they use, but they've sort of oversimplified things and made things too easy. And so that kids in certain programs in schools don't have access to what is considered grade level text in content classes like science and in their literacy instruction. So our job and part of the professional development work is to make sure that every classroom, every program has access to that grade level text. So whether you're a third grader in a special ed program or a third grader in a gen ed classroom, you are reading and accessing the same text. And you're being pushed to be at grade level regardless of what reading level you happen to be at now.
So if you're third grade and you're reading in a second grade level, shouldn't you have been kept back and kept in the second grade, and then that's how you know you're going to succeed there? Because if you're only reading at a second grade level, but you're forcing a third grade curriculum on them, it seems like you're setting kids up for failure.
Yeah, I think that's part of the work that they're doing is, and I'm certainly not the expert to be able to talk about equitable literacy and talk about the sort of mechanics of it, but it's our job to make sure that if the kids at the second grade level in third grade, that they're getting the supports that they need to be able to get to that grade level text. And sometimes it means that they're reading independently at grade level. And sometimes it means that there is support for them to get access to grade level text. But just because they're reading at a second grade level, it doesn't mean that the content that they receive all day should be second grade content.
Right.
Because
Okay.
by the time they get to fifth grade, by the time they get to ninth grade, that gap becomes wider.
In map growth reading, is that what it says? Are we just mapping out the growth of the students, or?
MAP is the brand of the assessment. So it's a measure of academic progress. So that's like the test scores that measure their progress in reading.
Okay. And it seems like there was a lot of talk about, and as this money comes in and we're looking at sustainability, how do we make sure we don't build something that we'll have to defund in 2 or 3 years? There's a lot of talk around, jobs, like employment. And so like, how is that, what's the plan to keep that sustainable if we're using ESSER money to hire these new FTEs? Like what is the plan there? Or is there a plan, or are some of those jobs funded but not filled?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple things. In any given fiscal year, we see a natural sort of attrition rate of teachers that are, or educators who are retiring or leaving the system. And so between the sort of anticipated attrition and the new investments that we're going to be making in inclusive strategies, we do think that there's going to be a place for a lot of our existing staff to move from ESSER-based positions into general funded positions. That's obviously not going to be a complete one-to-one, and there's always a sort of mismatch, but the last thing I would say, and that we do see a high vacancy rate, that not surprisingly, when the federal government invests billions of dollars across the nation in education, and every school district has extra money, there's going to be a shortage of teachers and educators across. And so we're not able to fill as many positions as we had hoped. And so a lot of the positions that will be going away are going to be vacant FTEs.
Okay. And I don't know if you know this or not, but over at the Devon McCormick, they have signed an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club to give, I think it was exclusive during the day to the Devon and the McCormick for the field house there. Does that come with any investment with ESSER there? Because now for me, an exclusive for the city means that my seniors and my kids that aren't in school yet, that quite frankly we were looking at trying to take care of in this program also. The talk around the field house started in 15, maybe a little before, but really accelerated because we had 15 feet of snow on the ground and seniors were shut in and the little kids were shut in. So now if the city is going to have an exclusive on that during the day, does that mean the city's going to come and actually put some money towards that program?
I apologize. I'm not familiar with any the financial arrangements around the field house and whether or not there's an agreement around payment. I do know that as part of
Did you know there was an agreement over there?
I know that we've been working on one, and it was sort of the original intent of taking the parcel that was part of the Dever McCormick.
Yeah.
And the plan to transfer was to make sure that our students were able to benefit from that field house. So I'm excited to hear that. I think it's going to be great for us.
To be part of a hub model, and I quite honestly, of course they're going to be part of it over there, and they deserve it over there, as the whole community deserves it. So my question would be, I don't see anything here for investment that we can point to, not a single field, not another school library, not like nothing at all.
Oh, so
Maybe you can get that together and get it over to me, but in this discussion, I haven't heard anything of the physical plant in any school becoming better from ESSER money, and that's something, we build a field house, that becomes sustainable on its own. That's a one-time investment that will give for generations, Nate. So how do we change your thinking on that?
yeah, well, I don't think it's a full change in thinking. I would say there is an investment as part of the equitable literacy investment in librarians. It comes with ESSER investment in terms of collections, so buying books and equipment for libraries. So we are expanding access to text, because books are another thing. You buy them 1 year and they last for multiple years.
Yeah.
It's a great investment. We also made an investment early on in indoor air quality, in expansion of air conditioning units that was purchased as part of that. I will say there was an additional hurdle that the state put on spending on ESSER for approval around facilities that made it more difficult. And then there needed to be capacity to be able to pull off those facilities investments. So we did not do a ton of facilities, certainly not.
What do you mean by pull off? Like, you build a gym in a school, you rehab a gym in a school, that's not pulling it off. Or a field house that's a public-private partnership isn't pulling it off. Is the field house not eligible for that money?
In terms of eligibility, I'll defer to Serene on that. What I meant was we had to have the central capacity in terms of facilities to be able to be able to execute on more of those projects. And so we have used ESSER to staff up, in terms of the Green New Deal team being able to do the facilities planning that we need to get it ready to do the major projects and upgrades. These are multi-year projects. And so we did not sort of right at the start of ESSER have large plans to do facilities using this money. Because again, it was focused mostly on academic and social emotional recovery. I don't know, Serena, if there's anything you wanted to add on that.
As it relates to facilities requests, anything that's considered a capital improvement, we had to get additional approval, and it had to be directly tied to recovery. So, and then on top of that, there's a limitation of when it has to be spent by with the ESSER funds. So again, I'm only narrowly speaking about ESSER in terms of our investments, but just to speak about the eligibility of that.
And the field house would be able to cover all of those things there. I just don't think there's been an open air to it, so I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Louis-Jean.
Thank you, and thank you for being with us here this morning. I just want to continue a thread that was opened. So our goal, correct, is to have a library in every school and a librarian in every school. And my understanding is that these ESSER funds are helping us meet that goal. We're still waiting on the district-wide review of what is the status of facilities in every school in the city of Boston compared to what is it that we believe every student deserves in their school building. And I'm looking forward to getting that as part of the budget cycle because I think that's important to all of the conversations that we're having here about schools when we're talking about mergers or we're talking about meeting the needs of our students. Knowing what is physically in our school buildings and what we need to supplement is important, whether that's with, I think Councilor Baker was speaking to the needs, the physical needs of our students, and I think this review hopefully will get us there. What schools need a gym, what schools need libraries, what schools need art classrooms, and I'm hoping that we can do the work to get every school there. Not my hope, we will do that work. So if you want to give us an update sort of like on where we are with our library goals and how ESSER is getting us there, I think that would be helpful for me to review. I know I came in a little bit late, so maybe you already did that.
We haven't done that yet. George Upman?
We did. So just the high level, we were saying that there is the 40% increase in student library access.
What does that mean, access?
So it means like access to like a library, a collection. And I can maybe pull up a little bit more detail because I know that there are additional like progress updates that they have. So if you give me a moment, I can maybe go into a little bit more detail on top of that, yeah. Or if you want to like ask more and then when we come around.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
relationship between, and I potentially missed this as well, the soft landing that we're giving schools and how that intersects with ESSER funding.
Yeah, so in terms of the hold harmless that schools have gotten, this year what we're asking schools to do is identify, for each school has a target of their hold harmless amount that we're asking them to move on to ESSER as sort of both a strategy to fully expend ESSER and a way to signal that these are more unsustainable. At the same time, we're asking them to identify things that are on ESSER that they're currently spending that are strategically aligned and move it onto their general funds so that what we have are the most strategic aligned positions that are funded outside of weighted student funding that are on our general funds, and then those things that are less strategically aligned are moved onto the ESSER funding.
Which, okay, continue, sorry.
No, I was just saying in terms of total dollar amounts, the amount of soft landings that or hold harmless that we have is, I believe, roughly 60 million.
District-wide.
District-wide. And then there's an additional 50 million that's been allocated directly to schools through ESSER.
15 million or 50?
50, yeah.
Okay, so that maybe there's like a $10 million gap between, you know, what we're providing schools via hold harmless and what they're able to make up via ESSER? Or would you not?
Sorry, those are, I didn't explain that well. Those are sort of additive, so that's the allocations to schools. When we ask a school to move their funding from hold harmless on general funds to ESSER, we add to their ESSER allocation for that amount.
Okay.
So it's not, the school's total amount, ESSER plus general fund, is not going down. It's just categorized differently. It's just different funding sources.
So what is the plan, right? Because most of the ESSER funds have been allocated and you can remind me when we're phasing out hold harmless. What is the plan for some of these ways that we've been able to boost up our schools with, whether it's, you know, with equitable literacy or with more paras, the long-term funding plan once we no longer have these these funding channels?
Yeah, I think that is the big challenge facing us. I think there's.
And what is that date? Like, when do we start to look at, okay, phase out, we don't have any of this anymore? I believe it might be in the chat chart. Maybe it's September 2024 for ESSER 3.
It's next year.
Yeah, so it's September 2024, so the first sort of few months of fiscal year 25. And so when we think about it, it's the end of FY24 that we need to have the plan in place. And that's why we sort of said this year is a transition budget as we start to think about and put ourselves in a position to identify. I think there are multiple levers that we can think about in terms of both policies that we can change and in terms of resources, but I do think that there's some tough conversations that we as a city and as a district need to have around what we're going to continue to invest in, what are those things that are critical, and what are those things that we need to cut, quite frankly.
And what will those, do you have a sense of what will be on the chopping block that we've been able to add or further resource as a result of these funds, where we're going to see potentially the deepest hits?
You know, I would say the superintendent has identified 6 priority areas in the budget. The first 3 are the ones that we're asking schools to prioritize in terms of moving off of ESSER and onto the general fund. That'd be inclusive strategies, equitable literacy, and the strategic plan for multilingual learners. Those are the critical investments that we need to make, and this, as the mayor mentioned in her State of the City, we'll continue to invest particularly in our inclusive strategies.
And that, so I think this is good. This is good. I understand that answer, but we also have folks at home. And honestly, there may be things that I'm missing. So when we talk about the inclusive strategy, and apologies, maybe you did this earlier, I think more precision in terms of what that means. Are we talking about more paras in the classroom? Are we talking about, like, what does that look like when we're talking about the inclusive education?
Yeah, so fundamentally, I think from an inclusive education, they talk about the least restrictive environment, which means students are included with their grade level peers for as much of the day as we can, while also maintaining and meeting the requirements of their individualized education plan. Right now, as a district, what we know is we put too many students in standalone special education classrooms and segment them from their peers.
And so I'm just asking materially, like when we're quantifying, like, what does that mean that we're having? So I was visiting. Is that my time?
Yeah, but I'm giving everybody another 3 minutes.
Okay,
so
okay.
you're fine.
Are we talking about making sure that each class? I was at the Dever the other day with the superintendent. So does that? And it was a classroom that has, and it's an inclusive classroom. There's one teacher, one para. But there should have potentially been another adult, teacher or professional in the classroom. So materially, when we're talking about inclusive education, what does that look like in a classroom setting? How many professionals are we talking about, and who are they?
Yeah, the thing I'll just say is inclusive strategies are not necessarily a staffing model. I can say all of those things will happen depending on the needs of the students. And so one of the fundamental shifts we need to make is going from a one-size-fits-all or sort of a standard staffing model across to letting the student needs drive the staffing and the relationship between the schedule, the teachers. In some places that'll mean co-teaching, so it'll be 2 teachers in a classroom doing co-teaching. In some cases it'll be a paraprofessional, or sometimes the paraprofessional could be a multilingual paraprofessional, or it could be a special education paraprofessional, behavioral. Sometimes it means how do you provide the extra support so students are included in welcome for the day, lunch, and all of the specials. What we're asking schools to do is create inclusion planning teams. The professionals come together and talk about the needs of their students, and to really think about what's the best way to make sure that they receive their services and are with their peers for the maximum amount of the day possible. And so, so it's additional staff, it's additional training, it's additional resources and supports in the classroom, and sometimes when not appropriate, the students are pulled out of the classroom to receive those services as well.
Thank you. And just so, and my question is elevating, sort of, is not me thinking of like, okay, what do we do? What's the staffing that we need in these schools? It's really reflecting what the most requested positions from the schools are in order to meet that inclusive strategy. And so, if it is part of the strategy is more adults supporting our children, and for me, I take that as more paras in our classroom. I also take that to mean more SLIFE classrooms for our students who have limited and formal education, and more support for, in talking to the superintendent, I'm really encouraged, and I hope that this is not something that we will continue, is ensuring that our SLIFE classrooms and our SLIFE students, with students with limited and interrupted formal education, have dedicated social workers to help them deal with their social and emotional needs and the trauma that they're facing. And so, part of me was just parroting what I think schools have been asking for, which is more of those professionals. And I guess lastly, I'll state, I am a big proponent of having more support for all of our students in our classrooms, and the transformative role that I think guidance counselors can play as being that first level of response when it comes to funneling our children, if necessary, to social workers, or working with the family liaisons who are really dealing more globally and holistically with the family mental health needs. A lot of our students, maybe they don't have a plan for college, and that's not necessarily what every student needs to be planning for, but our guidance counselors, I think, are really at the intersection of helping our students plan and think about the future, support that a lot of our students, a lot of our Black and brown students who make up most of BPS don't have otherwise, and also to help deal with that first level of, what's it like, what's going on in the classroom, what's going on in your life. We are, we are doing our students a disservice when we don't invest in sort of those holistic support systems. You know, we look at our last guidance counselors of the year from this year and last year, and they talk about the critical role that our guidance counselors are playing in the lives of our schools. So I just want to make sure that we continue to elevate that, and those are questions that I'll be continuing to ask, you know, as our budget cycle really begins to ramp up, thinking about the adults that we have that are supporting our children and giving them the love and support that they need to address the unprecedented mental health challenges that they face, but also helping them to think about their future in a way more holistically. And this is not to say that I have any sort of problem with how we are thinking about where the investments need to be made, especially because I think they are really talking, it looks like we're doing a good job of talking to the schools and assessing what they need, but just also putting that on the map and as part of the discussion about ways that we need to continue to wrap our kids with both the mental health support and the career college planning that they need. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lujan. I'm going to go to my questions now. I will be allowing councillors to have a second round if you want them. But I did have some questions on my end. One of them is I'm really trying to understand the full shape of the FTEs that need to kind of come over / need to go away. So when I look at the numbers that you guys gave us on the slides, it's about 50 million budgeted across district and school. FTE wise, it's 466.3 budgeted FTEs, but only 325.4 actual current FTEs. Although obviously only is one choice of words when you're talking about 325 people. And that's 70% of the budgeted, which means that you're talking about 35 million in actual payroll out of the 50 million budgeted. And so then one question I had is you guys talked about moving 15 million this year off of ESSER onto general funds of kind of like these key strategic positions that the district has been backing. It's like, I mean, related to what Councillor Louis Jen was asking, and I think it's been clear in your presentation, like obviously you're not going to be like the district's priority is equitable literacy, have people get a bunch of equitable literacy staff and then take them away, because that's not consistent with the goal. And I think with inclusion, right, wouldn't be consistent with the commitments that we've made in the contract and in the MOU. So I guess like one thing I'm trying to understand is that 15 million that you're moving over onto general fund, how much of that is FTEs versus other spending? Like, can I think of that as 15 million in payroll, or should I think of that as 10 million of my 35? Do you see what I'm trying to solve for? Yeah. That number?
We're still in the stages of finalizing that with schools, but I do think it's helpful to think of that as FTEs moving over. I think that will be the primary move that schools make.
Okay, so then it's like if I'm moving 15 over out of my 35 this year, because obviously, right, everything is about bridges to next year. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously and the flip side move of moving things on to hold harmless is to say to folks, this isn't what we're going to be able to afford next year. Mm-hmm. So then I'm like I take 15 out of 35. I've got 20 million in ESSER payroll this year that I don't yet have a clear projection. Is it all going away? Do you see what I'm asking, Nate?
Yeah, sorry, I got a little lost on the 35, but I will also just note there's a 24 million going in the other direction too. So it's net about a $9 million change in school budgets on the decreasing.
Right. Okay. So then, so what I'm saying is, let's say we're going to simplify this. Say that you had added 50 people in theory, but you've only added 35 people in practice. Mm-hmm. Obviously I'm just using, and then you're moving 15 of those people onto the general fund, aka giving them a strong signal that you are going to also be funding their positions next year as well, right? So that leaves us with 20 people who have been added in ESSER, who we don't yet know the fate. Now, maybe part of what you're saying to me is that there's another, with the flip side move of the hold harmless, you're freeing up, let's say, another 10 in space that could in theory be then next year more of these. Although that sort of begs the question for me of why you wouldn't just move, if that was the intention, why you wouldn't just move those 10 onto general fund this year, like why you wouldn't have the two numbers be cross each other perfectly, the 24.5. But then it would still leave me with another another 10, it's actually 10 million, right, in FTE money, where my question is like, do we have a projection of how many of the ESSER-funded FTE positions we expect to sunset next year?
So the first thing I would just say in terms of the 50, just simplified example.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the positions moving to ESSER, moving off of general funds in both directions, we're talking about the budgeted FTE not necessarily filled. So while it could be likely that the schools are going to prioritize filled FTEs to move onto general funds, that's not necessarily the case. In some cases, schools may be using this as an opportunity to move hard to staff ESSER positions onto their general fund so that they can recruit and hire people. Because we do know that there is people are concerned about taking positions that are funded on ESSER.
Limited.
So,
but that actually makes the problem bigger, not smaller, because that suggests that some of the authority that we're moving over is to attract people to the 30% that are unfilled. But that then means that there's more of the people in the filled where there's a question mark about where we're going next year.
I would just say there's not a problem we're trying to solve. There are multiple problems we're trying to solve, all of which sometimes have competing challenges. We want to very quickly get resources to students so that we can use the funding to recover from the pandemic. Vacancies get in the way of us meeting the student needs. At the same time, those vacancies, though, help create a more sustainable solution, except for it doesn't help us spend down ESSER because we don't want to return funding. So there's like,
Yeah. But at some point, as we get closer to the ESSER deadlines, right, it does seem as though the spending and sustainability challenges converge such that in a way that would push one away from spending down with new FTEs and would instead push one towards one time, like, really, let's buy all the books that we possibly need, right? Like, kind of like and it is Councillor Baker's point. I understand the point about, facilities, if you need the lead time of the state approval process and then executing on it is maybe making it less of a sure thing. But it does seem like there's a juncture at which you would stop trying to fill vacancies as a strategy for spending ESSER dollars.
Yeah, we've certainly stopped creating new FTEs on the school side for this reason. Another example of to your point, one of the things that happened during the pandemic we went one-to-one computing and bought Chromebooks for all of our students. This was a tremendous opportunity for us as a city, something that we wanted to maintain well beyond. We were originally going to, the way that we purchase those things is what's called a lease purchase, where we finance it over 3 years, because that's the life of the Chromebooks, so that basically we keep a consistent payment every year. Rather than finance the next round of Chromebooks, we're going to completely purchase them on ESSER. It's a great opportunity for us to just get the resources in-house and not have an ongoing cost. So that's an example of doing exactly that, and we are working with our teams to identify those one-time costs to be able to spend down ESSER.
Yeah, and so what I'm trying to understand is, like, of the FTE positions that are funded with ESSER, you have to have a breakdown somewhere, and I understand it's a moving target of, these are the ones we know we're keeping, like we are figuring out how to get them funded on the general fund, and there's a tranche of those we're prepared to say that about now.
That's right.
Right? And then there are ones that we have maybe we aren't yet at a place because of all the work we're doing on the student formula and like all of and facilities and thinking about everything, that like we're not yet sure, but we sure would like to keep them, and they're part of the like solve for. And then presumably there is some set of temporary positions that we set up with ESSER that we don't reasonably expect to be able to extend past the sunset of the funds. And I am asking what the proportions of those things are.
You want to take this one?
Yes. So, in terms of the like majority of the positions, that's like what we're trying to get toward. So, there are about 68.3 FTEs that are around, and I'm going to say like equitable literacy potentially, but with more digging needed, if that makes sense, right? So This is why we're trying to dive in deeper of like the implementation of the school's approach, because the district is going to have a stance of like what equitable literacy looks like, what inclusion looks like, right? And so there's that piece there. There's additional 49.7 positions around the specialist that could potentially, again, support inclusion, but again, to dive in deeper. So we do have those numbers. I would say that we would not concretely say that those FTEs in exactly how they're being implemented would be rolled over, but we are taking a look at it, and when we're having conversations with academics and other offices, I say academics because there's a lot of offices under there, but we are doing that work to be able to do exactly what you're saying. I would say at this point, we can say like on paper, this is what it could potentially be, but we want to make sure in implementation it's aligned.
Got it, I think. Can I ask a question about, on the chart that talks about ESSER spending over the multiple years, is the 111 for FY22 an actual number? Like, does that reflect actual ESSER spending that happened in FY22?
It's the ESSER budgeted.
Okay, so shouldn't we by now in FY23 know the actual for FY22?
You mean like what was actually spent?
I do, yes.
Yes, we do.
Could I get that number?
Yes.
And I guess the companion question would be whether 51 represents an actual in FY21.
So there's roughly 70 million that was spent, meaning like encumbered and like actually expended in FY22. The unspent was rolled over into FY23. So, yeah.
Right, so, and my understanding, right, is that we allowed schools to keep that unspent money, right? In the sense that like I think we talked about this in last year's budget, so, like cycle, Nate, that like if a school hadn't spent it in year one, we gave it to them to spend over year 2, 3. Mm-hmm. But I guess the point that I really want to land on is this is why it's really important for the council to have updated actuals on the spending, because what it means is that this chart shouldn't actually, I'm on page 13 for, it shouldn't actually be 51, 111, 154, 134. It should be 51, 70, and then it should be 194 has to be spent this year, and then 134 next year. And I think and if I had to guess, we're not on track to spend 194 this year, which means that it's like quite a lot of spending pushed to next year, which then makes this cliff problem that we're talking about. So I just feel like, I don't really feel like at this point the council should be looking at a slide that includes a projected budget for FY22 when we know that it's 40 million off. Mm-hmm. Like, I really feel like we have to be talking about actual numbers to like the closest date that we have them here and at the school committee, in order to make sure that we don't leave money on the table and that you guys have, because like I think there's a lot of things like the Chromebooks that where the district could, I mean, I'm a huge, on the academic side, like the idea of just buying really high quality books and materials and stuff, I think is really important. The idea of like, do our science labs need things? Like there are things that I feel like we could do as purchase orders that should hopefully not trigger a bunch of state facility scrutiny. But you really don't want to be doing that in the last 6 months of this deadline. So I don't know if you guys can speak to that a little bit.
I think that's right, and I think that's a fair critique of the slide as currently laid out. And I think I also think that you're right. The having the plans for what you execute on for those one-time costs, so that you can make sure the contracts are in place, you can make sure the purchase orders are in place, so that you can spend them and get them the resources to kids as early as possible. The other piece is if we're going to buy a book, the book has value starting today. There's no reason to wait till the end of ESSER for those resources to be in hand for those students. So I think that's a fair criticism of the slide, and we'll work to update it. And to a certain extent, I mean, this is such a significant cliff that I think we need to have multiple mechanisms in place to be able to fully expend it down. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, strongly agree. I have more questions, but that's my own time, so I'm going to just go to my colleagues for their second round, and I'll finish up with anything. Councillor Brandon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this issue about the spending timeline is really critical. One question, in terms of equitable literacy, I'm wondering, are we looking at the intersection between early literacy and early education and care, and then the K-12 continuum? I know one of my colleagues, Councillor Worrell, brought up the whole issue of a career pipeline, like cradle to career. Mm-hmm. Are we I'm really feeling that so many of our students who have challenges with literacy, early literacy starts before you ever get to kindergarten, mm-hmm. and we need to be coordinating and supporting that early literacy, early education paradigm, but also then thinking about young people who arrive in our school system from another country. English is not the spoken language at home. Parents might be low-income parents working multiple jobs. Access to books. Literacy happens in other languages as well. So, anything that we can do to support parents to become more fluent and proficient in English, even though they may be literate in their own language, that all adds to the ability of the child to become literate in English. So, are we doing anything in that space? It seems like it's underfunded to an incredible degree. I know recently there was a conversation I was in. I go to bat every year to get money for adult English funding for adult education, funding for English as a second language. But I'm asking for $50,000. This is sort of low-hanging fruit that we could really help move. I went to a fabulous presentation recently with celebrating the English for New Bostonians 20th anniversary in the schools at the Winship, and the parents were there. They were learning English, and their kids, who were also English language learners, were so proud of those parents and inspired to be more diligent students themselves because they saw the effort that their parents were putting in. So I think there's some sort of space there that we can really prime the pump and get some long-term benefits. And those kids, nothing can be more demotivating than being in fifth grade and be reading at a third grade level and just saying, "Oh, sod it, this is just a mountain that's so difficult to climb." And then the other question is just how much money are we putting into reading specialists and really, are we really tackling that problem? Like it's the huge issue that it is.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And it, of course...
We've had this conversation before.
No, I was thinking when you started talking about the parent piece, I was thinking about the event at the Winship, and of course, you would have been there. And so I think that's great, and I think those programs are incredibly helpful. I think it's incredibly moving to hear from parents who are able to help support their families. You have parents who are interested in investing and supporting their kids in education, and giving them the tools to be able to do that is a great opportunity for us. I would say we're also spending money on ESSER to continue to invest in our partnerships for early childhood, for universal pre-K expansion, for community-based partners, and working with the city to continue. We've had multiple conversations with Kristen McSwain about how do we continue to invest in this area to make sure students are arriving without that literacy gap already formed. And I think our community-based partners are incredibly helpful in solving that. Then we have the responsibility for maintaining that success throughout third, fourth, fifth grade as they get into those pivotal years where literacy goes from I'm learning to read to I'm reading to access text, I'm reading to learn. And so, those are obviously parts of the equitable literacy strategies to make sure that the gaps both close over time if they exist, but then in a lot of ways never exist. And that is our core work in instruction. And I think the last thing I'll just say in terms of when we talk about inclusion, I missed this opportunity when Councillor Lujian mentioned, when we think about inclusive strategies, when we often talk about strategies for supporting individual students in classrooms. That's what educators have this fancy term, multi-tiered systems of supports, where tier 3 is that sort of individualized intervention when somebody needs extra support. But we also need really good, what they call tier 1 instruction, which is the instructional environment for all students. And then we need tier 2, which is the small group sort of interventionist space. We're making investments in both of those areas for inclusion. Because if a student's able to get reading support, if they're able to get academic support without having to get an IEP, that can help make sure that they're in a more inclusive environment, make sure that they're never down that path of creating the sort of substantially separate or standalone path. So there will be an investment in school-based reading specialists, reading positions, both in terms of those are positions that we're absolutely moving from ESSER onto the general fund. It's also new investments that we're making in schools to help support their inclusive strategy. And to help support schools in thinking about that structure, there's going to be an investment in what we call MTSS coaches. Those staff members who are part of the team at the school who are able to work with teachers, work with their interventionists, work with special educators to be able to coordinate all of those resources that already exist at the school and make sure we're leveraging them to the greatest extent that we can. So those are two investments that we have proposed as part of FY24, and we'll come back and explain more during our hearing process.
Yeah, hopefully we're using some of this incredible ESSER money to leverage better, put some gas in the tank there. The other question I had really was just about, career pipelines for our paraprofessionals, our family liaisons. Mm-hmm. They're very invested in the education of our young people. Some of them, move on to become paraprofessionals. Are we able to, develop our own sort of career pipeline for those folks and give them the adequate support and partnerships with their community colleges or universities to help? And then also go on from paraprofessionals to become into our fully licensed educators in the schools as well. You have those folks they're incredibly dedicated to the education of our young people, and they're an incredible resource because many of them are multilingual, bilingual or multilingual.
Absolutely, yeah. I would say, we've also proposed, yes, we are doing a lot of those programs for our paraprofessionals, teacher pipeline, for both recruitment but also retention strategies, particularly for educators of color. This year we are proposing about $750,000 of that programming, which started on ESSER. We're moving it to the general fund because we think these are critical programs that need to be sustained beyond ESSER because they are great for diversifying our staff. They're also great programs for investing in our residents and our parents who are, in many cases are part of these programs.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. Councillor Murphy?
Thank you. I'm going to ask again a third time, but based on the Parthenon report that I know was discussed at the last school committee meeting and the full report was given at the DESE meeting last week, what investments are we making and making sure our data collection is better, because those reports are showing that we're really failing in many of these critical areas that myself and my colleagues are saying, crying out that we need support for. So I don't need that answer right now, but I do just want to put that on the record that, when we share data, but that we know we're a system that isn't properly collecting data, then how do we trust the data we're using? Because I can't trust it if I know, and reports are showing us. It's not just a feeling. Mm-hmm. I also want to touch on the understanding that equitable literacy and ESSER funding are two very different things, which I know you know, but every public school, because we take federal funds, needs to choose a literacy program. And BPS has chosen equitable literacy instruction. So all students are getting this instruction of how are our teachers across every school in, special needs, inclusion, sub-separate, general ed classrooms, how are we rolling out our literacy programming? So I wouldn't want there to be this idea that this equitable literacy is this one-time chance of how are we going to close our achievement gap. It's the programming that our school has invested in, and our teachers are expected, we buy programs, and the programs have to be proven at lots of different levels that, the data shows that they're going to teach our kids. So it's not that we're having this one-time chance of investing in the equitable instruction program. Meaning, the third grade teacher at the Kenny isn't going to be fired after ESSA funding's gone. That's just the literacy program she teaches her students when they come into the classroom, or he does every day. With that being said, you also mentioned, touched upon inclusion, and I do know working at the Henderson, which is one model that many schools try to copy. It's not always rolled out that way. It was written into the BTU contract, which now is adding a different level of need at the district level to really address what does it look like. And it looks different, it does, in how it's rolled out, and that's tied also into training for the staff, but also buy-in. If the culture at a school has not bought into inclusion working, no matter how many bodies you put in a room, if they're just standing in the back waiting for someone to misbehave, which isn't a term I would use as an educator, but oftentimes I hear being used to step in, that's not the point. The paras are supposed to be properly trained, or the co-teachers, so that they're making sure every student in the classroom is accessing the curriculum, which then ties into the equitable literacy, that are we teaching grade level content, and we're not, because we know that from what little data we do have, because 9% of our students at Madison Park High Vocational High School are reading on grade level. 91% cannot access the curriculum with their peers. And only 9 of our black boys in 3rd grade test advanced in literacy on MCAS. So if you go down that data hole on DESE and click, you have to compare it to a school where you may have a better understanding to think, is this even real? Is it true that really only 9% are reading, or am I reading this backwards? But it's true. So I think we have to, and it's not the conversation for today about ESSER funding and how will we spending this once in a lifetime, much needed, funding for social emotional needs, but ongoing conversation about with a $1.4 billion budget, we have to really value literacy, but also value the first comment that my colleague, Councilor Braden, brought up about investment in athletics, when only 72% of the general fund is being spent per student on athletics, and we spend over $27,000 per student. But then we're saying, well, we're going to up it to 96, and we'll throw in, $20 more, but that ESSER funding will be temporary. It's showing that the system, the district, is not investing and valuing long-term needs that we do know. And I do want to touch that, that we do know how they work. We have spent, or we will spend $166 million on empty seats. We can call it what we want. And I know there's pressure from the BTU to keep a lot of these seats open. But how do we legally justify when you said that this money can only be spent if it's directly tied to recovery coming out of COVID? How do we legally continue to spend when enrollment has been dropping for decades, right? It's not just a COVID thing. So how do we continue to justify making that exception when it comes to the way we fund schools, but we don't make that as exception for other things like a field house next to, if anyone followed the history of the Dever McCormick, they went into receivership. They're a school system, those 2 schools are a school that could very benefit that community, that neighborhood, those students could benefit from that investment. But I could say that about, all across the city. I'm just using that example. There's lots of schools and lots of communities that could use investments that would put a theater, put a library, put a science lab. But I just have trouble with separating out the $1.4 billion we already have which is a lot in this once in a lifetime. And I don't want people to think that after this happens, that our students will no longer have quality teachers in front of them, because that's what we need to have no matter what. That's what we needed in 1986. That's what we'll need in 2035. The COVID pandemic has just brought this extra fund of money, but how are we going to address that? The conversation seems to swirl around equitable literacy and the need for more teachers when that should already be happening. So I'll let you answer some of those, all of those, or follow up after, but I still have 2 minutes, but if
Yeah, no, there's 3 minutes. Yeah, you hit the 7, but it's another 3 minutes. So yeah, so if you guys want to respond to any of the things that Councilor Murphy just raised.
Sure, and I didn't know which parts of that may have been a question directed to us, because I think you were making a lot of important points. I think in terms of the allowability was one thing, the sort of legality of it. I think Esther's incredibly flexible in terms of what we are.
Right.
You know, there's no rules like on Title I where there's a supplement, not supplant requirement. I think the requirement that we do have all come from DESE in terms of what we need to report back to them in terms of the alignment to the DESE's priorities, and then approval for any sort of facilities upgrades.
And that's what is heartbreaking to me, that because we have so many gaping holes in our system that is failing on many levels, we're using this money to fix like classroom academic concerns or buying textbooks, which is, we have money to make sure we have textbooks. The students at Henderson High School walked out and the superintendent welcomed them at the bowling and had a conversation about the fact that they don't have Chromebooks. They don't have resources. So we know it's true that if we went to, the small number of schools across this district, any one of us could visit all of them in a short period of time. It's not equitable across with the, with the $1.4 billion budget. We should not have to be spending any of this ESSER funding. We should be able to be building fields and making sure there's science labs. And, if you go up to the Lee School that we're doing over their theater, that but we're having to spend it, or we're choosing to spend it to fill the gaping holes that have come out of decades of not being a quality school system. I guess there's no need to answer that, but if our district was in a different position, we would be at lots of wonderful ribbon cuttings, and our students in much needed neighborhoods would be seeing quality improvements, and parents would be seeing, quality education and investments that all of our students deserve, not just some of them. And we shouldn't be relying on partnerships with our community when our budget, the city continuously rubber stamps the school budget. And we have to do a better job of how we spend it and how we educate our students. And we also have to do a better job of just being honest. Because in my position, having to not be able to communicate with intergovernmental because maybe I asked too many questions or not get answers back, and then find out, that the data being collected is skewed or not complete. I mean, I think we deserve it on the council, but every resident in the city of Boston, if they choose to send their children to BPS or not, or they don't have kids, or their kids have, older now, that we deserve to know, what's going on in our schools, because our kids who do, either by choice or forced to use the Boston public school system, should be having a quality education no matter what school they're at, no matter what grade level, no matter what inclusion model the school district, that school chooses to use. So I'll end it on that.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. I'm going to go, I have a few more questions, and then I'll be going to public testimony if there is any. I think we don't have any signups yet, but if you're watching at home, again, you could email right now, shane.pack@boston.gov for the link. That's shane.pac@boston.gov. Or if you're in the room, you could sign up on the sheets in the corner, and we will take public testimony at the end, right after I ask just a few more questions. So one question is just, what is the timeline of the reimagined school funding piece?
So the project is currently ongoing. Our hope is that we are able to make a recommended new model in time for FY25 planning, which would be October, November of this year
Okay,
for FY25 planning.
right. No, exactly. Because it seems pretty important for that planning. And then, is there a difference in eligibility for ESSER 2 versus ESSER 3? No.
No.
So everything, so I guess one question that I have is, and this is kind of I don't know, I think this is an 8 question. Like, when I look at this chart, I think it's on 13. Is it on, no, it's not on 13, it's on like 5. The one that shows me yeah, on 5. What I don't understand, Nate, is I would have filled the ESSER 2 bar completely by now, and we would only be spending off of ESSER 3 because its deadline is a year sooner, and if the eligibility is the same, I don't understand why we're risking having anything in ESSER 2 not be spent when we're spending money.
Yeah, I mean, and Serena can give you details on how this has happened, but we will fully expend ESSER 2 before moving on. This is has to do with the way that we allocate it out, and when we allocate out the budget, we hold that money for that person to spend through that fiscal year, even if we know that, or we see that it's not fully expended. So the school-based spending that is currently planned on ESSER 3, we may do expenditure transfers to fully expend ESSER 2, so that the deadline comes up for ESSER 2 earlier than the deadline for ESSER 3. So we'll make sure to fully expend that grant before the end of it.
Right, so
before moving on to ESSER 3.
So that makes sense to me, and it also makes sense to me that, to me, this is something that your office should be able to deal with without anybody at the schools having to worry about whether their stuff is being paid ESSER 2 or ESSER 3, right? So if the deadline for ESSER 2 spending is by September of this year, like, I mean, from my perspective, it would be really good to know that we had fully expended ESSER 2 by like May or June. Like, there's no reason to let it run right up until the deadline, you know? Like, so I'm asking a little bit for a timeline on that accounting, like, execution.
Well, the deadlines for each of these are that the funding needs to be encumbered by the deadline. We have time to spend it afterwards. So it could be the case that we fully expend it after the grant period's ended because we've encumbered it in time. But there's multiple steps that happen. We do in between just thinking about a September deadline for expenditure, September 30th. There's the general fund deadline of June 30th. There's the entitlement grant deadline of August 31st, and then we have this deadline. So we're trying to fully expend across all of our funds to make sure. And sometimes that means moving expenses from one grant to another based on eligibility or based on fully expending it. So that there's always some of that cleanup that happens in between. But yeah, we do our projections to make sure we have an appropriate estimate of our run rate, because what we don't want is to be in May or June and find out that we don't have enough expenses to fully close out a grant, because that's what leads to us returning funding to either the federal government or to the state, depending on the grant.
Right. And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, when I look at these bars, it seems to me like, and I take your point about encumbering, right? But you guys made that distinction on this graph, the light blue is encumbered. So like, I look at this and I'm like, okay, the amount, and this is obviously all the way back to October. I know these numbers have moved, right? But like back in October, that snapshot, the amount that is expended and encumbered that you have tagged to ESSER 3 seems visually like it would be enough to have ESSER 2 be entirely spent. So I feel like it would just give us some like comfort to know that that move was made like sooner rather than like it doesn't seem to me like there's any reason for that not to be a fully blue bar by the time we're certainly at the end of this fiscal year. And I know that I understand it's a technical point that I'm ragging on, but like there's nothing worse for those of us in oversight roles than to like wake up the day after the deadline and like, oh, you know, psych, we had to return money for some reason. So I'm just wanted to overland on the point, if you see what I mean.
Totally understand your point there. When we present this information, we wanted to be able to provide backup in our financial systems to be able to explain this. There is a distinction in the financial system between the way we track ESSER 2 allocations and ESSER 3 allocations and how departments and schools are spending those two different allocation points that make this slide technically correct. And your point, though, is we could present the information differently so that you can see fully. Have we?
Well, my point's more actually that you could change in the backup. Like at some point, the backup financial systems need to reflect moving a bunch of these things over to ESSER 2, right?
Totally hear you. We're not at that point in our annual process where we've done that, but I hear what you're saying, and
But it's planned, like it's intended
Yes.
to do that.
Yes.
Okay, that's the key thing. I just really, it is already, from my perspective, very stressful that, you know, if I had to guess, you know, if we spent 70 last year of ESSER, we will be lucky if we hit 100 this year. Just talking about profiles of how people spend money. And that, like I said, to me means that like there's a good chance that we're looking at spending half of the total ESSER funds that we got all in FY24, which is suboptimal in that it would have been better to have this be the bulge year and then next year be the climb down year. And instead it continues to be a climb up year and then a drop. And obviously your graph shows the preferred model, but I just don't think it's that likely. And so, yeah, I'm just like stressed about ESSER 3, how we spend it all down, and don't want to worry about somehow we've also created some accounting issue for ourselves with ESSER 2. So that's just, you know. And then I guess, and sorry, I forgot to confirm, 51 was the number for FY21? The actual number?
For FY21?
Yeah, so on your graph.
the original CARES plus
CARES
city.
plus ESSER. I assume that's not a budget number.
Yeah, so ESSER 1 was 51.
Yeah, just that in FY21, that's what we actually spent.
Yes,
51, okay, cool.
fully expended.
Okay, and then you mentioned about 120 FTEs across English language, no, sorry, across equitable literacy and inclusion, 68.3 in equitable literacy, 49.7 inclusion, acknowledging those are rough numbers. You guys had mentioned 3 areas. The third one is the multilingual piece. Do you have a guesstimate on ESSER FTEs that are sort of multilingual education tagged that are sort of like a parallel? I sort of assumed because you gave me 2 of the categories that you might have the third.
We do. Could you follow up with us though?
Yes, well, I'm going to be doing that anyways.
Okay.
So, and what about, I had the impression, I was thinking about this with the facilities point, I had the impression that we were doing over the last couple of years some considerable like AC upgrades in places that we could, and those certainly seem very like tangible and taggable to the pandemic type thing. So are we tagging any of those as ESSER expenditures, and what's the proportion of that? Like what's the scale?
Yeah, so we're rolling out air conditioning units at all of our schools and classrooms. I believe the total amount is 20 million over the 2 grants, but
And is that 20 million in ESSER?
that's on ESSER, yes.
Yeah, okay, and so where was that when I looked at this ESSER 2 and 3 breakdown, I didn't really see where that would have been counted. This is on slide 4.
That would have been counted in the
District-wide
district-wide investments in that
investments.
207 million.
Okay. I do think, and I've said this before in other BPS hearings, but I'm just going to continue to ask for information in this format. So this is more of a preview of because we will send an information request after this hearing. I continue to think that it's actually quite helpful for the council to understand expenditures divided into FTEs, capital, and I don't really mean capital because I'm including like books. I'm talking about like things that you purchase, that you build, that you stuff, right? And then, so it is capital, but it's also like those kinds of like the Chromebooks, right? And then there's like contract/services, right? Where it's like, it might be being provided by a worker, but they're not an FTE who we've added to the BPS books. Like to me, that's actually like fiscally kind of like the each of those things are different, right? FTEs create a very clear sustainability question. One-time capital/supplies doesn't create that question. And then contract/services is in this in-between zone, depending on what they were for. If it was professional development that hugely impacted a teaching core that will now be teaching in the schools for decades, then we're not, as concerned, or they produced an analysis or whatever, versus if the contract is for them to come in and run after-school program every week, then we have a problem, right? But it seems to me like when council thinks about sustainability, those are importantly different categories of spending. And I think the way that you guys divide your spending, while helpful in other ways, is not helpful for us. It's not maximally helpful for us trying to understand that.
Yeah, I would say in our core financial reports, including the budget that we propose and our monthly budget updates to the school committee, we break everything down in 3 different ways, one of which is by account, which then splits up non-personnel spending from personnel spending, and then within those categories, we break down even further. So within personnel, you can see how much we're spending on benefits versus FTE versus temporary part-time positions. Within accounts, you can see the breakdown between supplies, contracts, facilities, and those different pieces. So there's a great deal of transparency and detail around that in our standard sort of spend reports. And we'll be incorporating and have incorporated in the last version the ESSER spending by those categories as well.
That's
so
what I was
that
about
you
to
can
ask.
see it. And so you can see in our FY24 budget proposal the breakdown. We provide the budget. There's multiple, obviously, ways you can split the data.
Yeah.
There's general fund versus external funds. And then there's the all funds, which is both of those combined. This year, we've added a third bucket, which is general funds, all funds, and ESSER funding, so that you can see ESSER funding is separate from all other external funds.
And you can see all those subcategories within ESSER.
For each, and then within each of those three funding sources, you can see by department, which is who's responsible for managing the spending, by account, which is exactly the type of stuff we're spending it on, and then by program is sort of a modifier on accounts. You can see how much of the teachers that we're spending on inclusion, how much of special ed teachers do we spend on inclusion, how much do we spend on English learners versus other sort of district-wide programs is kind of that snapshot. And that gives you a great, I think when we do our presentations, we're often trying to aggregate the data in a way that's digestible and helpful for people to understand the purpose that we're spending it on. But you are, and appropriately so, thinking about, I just want to get the nuts and bolts of how we're spending it. It's available in these tables that most people's eyes glaze over when I start talking about them.
Right, and are you saying that I can find all those tables now?
Yes.
Okay, great, excellent. So, because I think, but part of what I'm trying to say is that I'm also providing some feedback about the type of information that is salient for the council. And I'm saying that because the council oversees the budget and has to vote on it and is worried about sustainability, that I'm trying to say that when you make these slideshows, you might also think about that piece as opposed to just the programmatic piece. And it might be that I care more about some of those details than some people do, but that's just, just a sort of feedback point. And it's good to know though that you already have it all, so that's easy enough for us to follow up on. Did you get the multilingual number?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to ask after.
Yeah, that's right. You're gonna send it to me later. Okay. And then I guess my other question is sort of, I was looking at the example you were giving Nate in the packet around sustainability and what's moving over for school Y. And it just, right, it's sort of, when I look at these, it's clear, right, the things that we're kind of ring fencing and saying, hey, the district said you had to have these. We think they're critical to every kid's education, and so we're not gonna have the right hand give them to you and the left hand take them away, right? Which is like the family liaisons, the librarians, the social workers, the nurses. These are the things that I have seen us on the council and in partnership with the schools really add these positions over the last few years. So I think it's really important what you're doing there. But then it seems like some of the positions that are more like what the schools are picking above and beyond that, right? You've got here you have sort of 4 other managerial, and you've got an assistant principal, and you've got a guidance counselor and a substitute and someone who's a field coordinator, and I don't really know what that is. But it sort of seems, I don't know how representative this example that you pulled is, like, of other schools, but it would seem to me like the trade-off that we're talking about for a lot of our schools is this kind of like extra managerial handling, like hands, versus like these very specific competencies and roles. And so if overall our push is going to be, I guess part of what I'm curious about is BPS's position that our schools need to be lighter on that like top admin, like kind of space, or not even necessarily top admin, but like just kind of general purpose administration, somebody to go handle a thing, and have more people with particular competencies. Like, is that the assertion that we're making? And so we're going to ask our administrative teams to be lighter? Or is it not that we necessarily think that, but just that we think you do need this kind of scaffolding too, but we just don't think we can sustain this scaffolding for as many schools? Do you understand the question I'm asking?
I do. It's a really interesting one, and I think I don't think it's our position that schools are heavy administrative staff. I think a lot of times when you talk to school leaders, there are a lot of what they refer to single admin buildings, which is a principal without a lot of the support to do the logistics, which makes it really difficult for the school leader to be the instructional leader of the school, to spend time in classrooms, to give feedback and coaching and support on instruction, which is critical to moving the needle on whatever we're trying to do instructionally. I think the way you characterize it is super interesting about these core competencies. I think is the right way to think about it. And that's why there's not a formulaic move. There's not a central decision about what positions are moving. There's a conversation that's happening right now with the schools, with the central office teams, with their school superintendent around how we're using these resources, because a CFC could be used for community engagement, could be that person who's going to seek out partnerships. The CFC could also be somebody who's helping to create the inclusion culture in the school. There's multiple ways that those positions can be used. So by working with individual schools, we identify how they're using these positions. And so that managerial support could be their inclusion coach, or it could be their person who's focused on behavioral interventions. There are multiple ways that those positions can be used. And I think we have a great deal of autonomy, which means school leaders have a great deal of flexibility in how they use their resources, over and above the sort of these requirements. And so sometimes we'll go in and say, we want you to not only do a family liaison, but we want this type of position, because it's now going to look the same across all schools. And in some case, we may say, tell us how you're doing this work, who's responsible for it, and how you're managing it, which could be stipends, it could be part of a person's time to be able to manage that work. And so the example was in that purple piece, there's a conversation where we say, how are you using these resources aligned to these goals? And most often what we hear from schools is they're already aligning to the strategic goals. They're just doing it in a lot of different ways. Sometimes in ways that we think are great and we should learn from. Sometimes we think are maybe less effective than other strategies, and we want to move them away from that strategy to a different one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just seems, it seems like it's going to be extraordinarily challenging. The dynamic, I mean, Councilor Murphy was talking about sort of like honesty, and I think it's really important to acknowledge, like, when we're just in a really tricky spot, and it's really, we're in it, like the council and all of you who spend every day getting up and working on behalf of Boston Public Schools. Like, to me, the concept that next year we will both need to spend $200 million in federal money, and that we will need to wean our schools off of about half of their hold harmless money. It just seems it's one or the other would be hard, but the two together create a cognitive dissonance that's like almost impossible. And I'm sorry, that's not like an upper to end the hearing on, but like, it's just like,
It's interesting. I mean, I think part of the, people often start at the point in that ESSER was created to sort of help with learning loss and recovery. But the original stimulus package got momentum because there was a fear that we were about to enter a major recession and that we were going to need additional federal help to be able to sustain local revenues, which were going to decline. So rather than think about this as a sort of hill of spending that we were going to have or a spike of spending, it was going to maintain anticipated declines in local revenue. By the time it became clear to people that there wasn't going to be a decrease in local revenue, there wasn't going to be a recession over the last few years, there was already enough momentum that people shifted and said, okay, there's going to be a lot of learning loss that we need to recover from, which is true. That's not a 3-year learning loss. That is a multi-year investment in our schools and our services. And so we do have this challenge, right? We have for years said we need more for our students. We need more athletics programs. We need more programs for parents of students. These are programs that we wanted to be able to stand up, but we can't stand them up unless we have a plan for continuing them beyond. Because in a high needs district where these programs are going to support kids who are most vulnerable, giving them resources only to take them away 3 years later is not a responsible thing to do. So it creates this real challenge for us that unless we have a plan for additional revenue to come in and replace this new increase, that's that tension between what do we do if we don't fully expend it, but what do we do if we do fully expend it? Because it's like increasing our cliff
Right.
while not leaving money on the
But
table.
it just keeps driving you back to the one-time things. It drives you back to what can you bank? Like, it does, that's the thing, is it makes, to me, it does reopen the facilities question. Like, it's like, are there things that we can assess quickly enough to be like, yeah, no, here's actually our strategy for how we're going to spend 100 mil of this on facilities next year. I mean, because otherwise it's really hard to figure out how to square that circle. Yeah, I just, and it is important to me. So with ARPA, you have to encumber by 2024, but you have to spend by 2026. Do you know what the actual spending deadline is for ESSER?
I don't know that answer. I can get back to you on that.
So that seems important to me, because I do think that a considerable answer to this question would be if we actually just need to have all the contracts signed, but we have another 2 years on ESSER like we do on ARPA, that would create considerable smoothing.
Yeah, I don't know what the
effects.
exact timeline is, but it is not the same length of time as ARPA. So
Yeah, I don't think it is either.
I think it's closer to 3 or 4 months. I'll come back with the exact for you. I mean, another just interesting point as we start to think about this, a lot of other districts nationally, particularly large urban districts nationally, have the ability to carry a fund balance forward. And so they are not as concerned with or focused on how do we fully expend ESSER in the same way that we are, because they can just move their general fund dollars over to fully expend ESSER and then carry that balance forward and then think about a multi-year approach to the spending in a different way. And it's sort of unique to us. There are a subset of states that restrict that fund balance on local districts the way that Massachusetts does for Boston. So if you're not hearing about other districts nationally having the same sort of fiscal cliff conversation or the intensity around how they're going to fully expend it, because their plan, and from conversations we've had with other CFOs and other finance teams across the nation, their plan is to carry a greater fund balance going into FY25 and potentially FY26 that is not available to us currently.
No, that's helpful context. And I also think there's the context that, as you pointed out, we should recognize as a fortunate thing that we both, obviously, the recession didn't hit on the timeline that people expected, but then also Boston's revenue sources, because it's so property tax dependent, was more resilient than some others. And so also I expect there are other cities that can carry a fund balance, like you're saying, that there are also other cities that had to do more of what was originally anticipated, which was to backfill from, economically sensitive revenue losses that we haven't experienced.
It's something to think about in terms of advocacy. If, in terms of what you can do as the city council as you think about opportunities is how do you create the flexibility for us that it's not that hard deadline to spend the full amount? Because I know that we will be talking about ESSER recovery for this generation of students until they've graduated, hopefully ready for college or career or for what their choice is going to be afterwards. And we need to continue to invest in those students, not just in FY25, but certainly beyond.
Yeah, I think the council and the administration and BPS should be talking now about if what we want is to, I know there are jurisdictions that have been advocating around like ARPA deadlines and such. We're actually further along in encumbering and spending our ARPA dollars than most other municipalities around the country. It's an inverse of the dynamic you described. But I think that if there's advocacy to be done there, I think it would be great for us to do it sooner rather than later, as opposed to just at the absolute 11th hour. We're not going to spend this money. Give us a mulligan. I do think it would be helpful if we could discharge all of the ESSER too, because when we haven't done that, it looks like we aren't managing to zero effectively. Even though it's an optics thing, I think it is. We've already committed more money than we have in ESSER 2. So let's just be able to be talking about ESSER 3 and not have that muddy the waters is my editorial comment. Anyways, okay, I think those were all of my questions. Councilor Murphy can see my sheet and my extremely chaotic way of keeping track of what I want to ask. Okay, I'm just going to check whether we have. Okay, we don't have any public testimony. We will be following up with an information request, and I do. I really want the council, and I think it should be going to the school committee too, to just be getting a regular report. I can get the last month's snapshot of our ARPA spending and encumbrance from Casey Brock Wilson's office, anytime right now, and we also have these quarterly reports that are being published online. I understand that the form of federal oversight over those dollars is different for ESSER versus ARPA, but I just, as we do this advocacy I just think there needs to be a kind of rolling, updating data that shouldn't involve a whole narrative presentation, right? It should just be here's where we are. So my office will follow up on that front. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the information that was in this and all your work. I know we grabbed the only week that you didn't have a presentation to the school committee on BPS budget, which I thought of as a kindness, but could also be seen as taking your off week away. So I'm sorry.
It's early in the week, so
yeah, your Thursday's off,
That's
right?
right.
Or your Wednesday, Thursday, so I will allow some brief closing statements from colleagues, and then we'll wrap up. Councillor Braden, yeah.
Thank you both for being here this morning. I think you've heard us loud and clear. We really are concerned about the timeline to spend these funds, and for me personally, I think they're early education and the pathway, and then also thinking about those students who have already left, who've ever graduated our schools who are impacted by COVID. Are we working with those folks to make sure they're getting the support, so that in terms of more adult education, are they getting into community college? And again, I think I'm coming back to my colleague, Councillor Worrell's idea of the cradle to career timeline, and actually having a system that is continuous from preschool through graduation and after graduation, so that we can know how successful we are with preparing our young people and where the gaps are. If we don't collect that data, and if we have two different systems that don't talk to each other, and we lose kids in the mix, then I think we're doing them a great disservice. So I think, again, there's another place we could spend some money. So thank you so much for, we will be seeing you all again soon, and I think having timely reports about where we're at with this process would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. Councillor Murphy?
Or thank you, and thank you, Councillor Braden, for uplifting those students who have left our system, but were probably, we could argue at any grade level who was hurt the most, but investing in our little ones. As a former kindergarten teacher for many years, I obviously will always advocate for that, but I don't think ESSER funding is the place for that. A couple years back, the superintendent had framed the front page of the newspaper that was patting ourselves on the back for the lowest or the highest level of graduation rates going up, but we had taken away all of the requirements, or many of the requirements. So of course the number of students graduating went up. So we really have pushed along students in the last few years for lots of different, COVID reasons, and they were graduating without the basic skills they needed. So where are they? We also lost a lot of students in COVID, especially as BPS extended for another full year, much longer than other school districts did, working completely remote. And the data that is still not fully clear on how many students were actually logging in over that year and how many kids did not return to our system, like where are they? It does personally keep me up at night wondering where did they go. And this generation of 19, 20, 21-year-olds who were sophomores, halfway through their sophomore year, junior year, senior year, what did they miss and what were they already what were they already lacking at that point? And then what happened when they didn't have the needs? So making sure that we're looking at that as a city, and something we could do more maybe on the council to make sure that if there's other funds we can support that age group is important. And the cliff analogy is great, and I think it then opens up the conversation absolutely for spending this on facilities. There are rules, but like you said, we can be flexible if needed. So facilities is something you have forever. You build it and then it's there for generations. And lastly, I will just say I appreciate that we don't want to micromanage principals, administrators, teachers at the school level and kind of give them the autonomy knowing, well, you know best. But when the data shows many times, time and time again, that the schools are failing on academically and safety reasons and all, that we then have to step in as a system, and we can't just let them sink because we've made this decision that we're going to let principals and school level communities make decisions, when at the end of the day we're seeing that students are being promoted and they can't read or graduating without the skills they need. We have to have some safety nets in place. That has to be a balance, and I hope that the superintendent and the team is invested in that, and knowing it's always tied to your office of the budget, like what are we valuing and making sure we're funding going forward so our students are successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Yeah, I'll just thank again the BPS team. I think this is a really important conversation. I think that BPS, we face a lot of challenges, and then we have a bunch of resources, and we've discussed some of the difficulties of matching those resources to the challenges, but it's surely better to be in the position of having these federal funds that give us an opportunity to think strategically. I think that in many respects, we're really talking about a double cliff. We're talking about a federal funding cliff, and we're talking about a funding vis-a-vis enrollment cliff. And I think it's setting up a very difficult set of conversations, but I do appreciate the fact that I think that the district is grappling with that in part by shifting the hold harmless funds onto ESSER this year, because difficult conversations don't get easier by not having them. So I do really appreciate the challenge of what you all are wrestling with. I think that I want to continue to emphasize that there is no disentanglement of the ESSER spending from the overall budget questions for the school, and so that therefore the council is going to continue to take an interest in this because of all the interrelationship that we've been talking about, and that's the spirit in which we're going to keep coming back to you for more data on this. But really appreciate you guys taking the time today, and I know we didn't quite make 3 hours, but we did manage to make it a bit of a long hearing, but I think I at least learned a lot and got a lot of useful information. So thank you, Serena and Nate, both for your work. And with that, this hearing of the Boston City Council's Committee on Boston's COVID-19 Recovery is adjourned.
Awesome.